What's good, y'all? Welcome back to another episode of In the Loop, Out the Mix. I'm your host, Jace 2 Cents, and if you couldn't already tell, your boy's feeling a lot better than last week and the week prior. I'm still a little sick, I ain't gonna hold you. I don't know what's going on, y'all. I probably should have took a COVID test, if I'm being honest. Just to see if that's what was going on. But I'm on the other side of it now, so I'm kind of chilling now. Now, today, I still don't know what I want to title this week's episode, but today we're talking about God, y'all. We're talking about God. Now, I want to preface everything I'm going to say with I'm just a guy with an opinion, and I'm speaking from personal experience, so please take everything I say with a grain of salt, and don't come at me sideways if my experience doesn't align with yours, okay? Please. But my first point isn't really a point. It's kind of more of a question, why God? There's a lot of things we can talk about. Yeah, that's true. And my question to anyone who has that question is, why not? And, I was really thinking about how I wanted to approach this week's episode. And to be honest, y'all, I don't really have many answers. It's more about me speaking of where I'm at in life. And if anybody can relate to anything I'm going to say, go ahead and let me know your experience in the comments. And who knows, maybe what I have to share isn't so far off from what you're going through. But growing up, I was raised a Jehovah's Witness, but I didn't know who Christ is. That's another thing. I forgot to specify. When I'm talking about God, I'm talking about the God of the Bible, all right? The God of Abraham and Isaac, all right? All right? I hope we're on the same page still. Growing up, I was a Jehovah's Witness, and I didn't know who Christ is because the thing about Jehovah's Witnesses they are very religious. It's very rigid in their beliefs. They don't prioritize a relationship with Christ. It's more of you have to do these things, otherwise you're not getting into the kingdom. The gates aren't opening for you on that day. And so I grew up prioritizing things that didn't really matter versus the things that really do matter as it relates to God. For me, I think for people in general, if I don't understand the why for why we have to do so many things or why things have to be a specific way, then I'm not going to want to do them because it's going to seem arbitrary. It's going to seem pointless. Now, I don't know how it is in other parts of the world, how other societies or cultures raise their children up to think, but at least how I was brought up to think here in the U.S. as a youngin', I was taught at a young age, you go to school and you learn a skill, you learn a career that'll provide for you, have a good career, save a lot of money, get rich. Those were the things that were promoted to me, at least in school, not at home because I didn't really listen at home. I didn't really listen at home, but in school, those were the things that we were taught to value. Those were the things that we were taught were important. You gotta know what you want to be. You have to have it all figured out. So that's exactly what I grew conditioned to care about. Now, if you watch the first few episodes, you know that I'm a communications major. And when I went into this major, it was with the motive of I want to be the next influencer. I want to be the next this, the next that, in terms of public speaking, people who are famous for their ability to speak. And I'm learning about rhetoric in school, and it's pushing me in so many different directions. Learning about classical rhetoric this past semester, I learned that a good rhetor, which is that's the word for people who are rhetoricians, rhetors. A good rhetor, I don't even know if I'm saying the word right at this point, but a good speaker is someone who can speak on a multitude of things. So I just went on this. I thought I had to go on this journey of learning all of these different aspects of the world, all these different philosophies, in the hopes of being this next wise public speaker, of being this next person who, just being the next big thing. Cause that's another thing about American culture. Like we're all on the hero's journey. We're all trying to make it out the mud, figure it out. And since I had my coming to Jesus moment in 2022, that's a heart disposition that I've had to battle a lot. Like constantly questioning myself of, does this thing really matter? Like, why do I even want this? Because when I read the word, which brings me to my next point, when I read the word and I get to a book like Ecclesiastes, the Bible tells us everything is meaningless. And that seems like a very pessimistic view to have on life. But when you think about it, like everything that we're chasing are just distractions from things that really matter. Take it, let's like take it out of a like faith perspective for a second, right? Everything that we're taught that matters, like getting a good paying job, making a lot of money, getting rich, buying the things that you want to buy, like that hero's journey that I mentioned, that distracts you from friendships, from family. Well, it can. It doesn't always. Now, I got to remember, I'm not like everybody else is me. I'm not everybody else. But it can deter from the more weightier matters of life. And I've seen so many stories of people who are successful who say you got to go into a season where you just cut off all people from your life, all distractions. I'm talking about the real like top people. Okay, not everybody's like this. But they'll tell you something along those lines. Like you gotta go monk mode. You gotta lock in for a certain amount of time, and then you'll get everything that you want in life. And another thing that I've seen from those same types of people is that they get to where they thought they wanted to be, and then they question if it was really worth it because all the people in their life are still stuck in wherever they're stuck at. And they didn't bring anybody with them on that journey. So now they're all alone at the top of whatever field they're in. And it's just like that from a worldly perspective is kind of meaningless because you get to where you want to get and you realize that it's not what makes you happy. It doesn't complete you like you thought it would. You're still wishing that you still had certain friendships from the past that you had to like let go of to get where you wanted to be. And then when you bring the spiritual aspect into it, like when we die, we can't take any of those things with us. That fancy car that you worked so hard for, the mansion that you bought, whatever things that you thought that you needed, those things that you worked so hard for, you can't even take with you when you're dead. Ecclesiastes even like jokes about this in a way. It's like the house that you worked for, someone else is going to be sleeping in it when you're gone. The car that you drive, someone else is going to be driving it. It doesn't say these things word for word, but the principles are there. Like the money that you make is going to be spent by other people. So does it really matter? Yes, it matters temporarily while we're here, but it shouldn't be the sole focus of our life because ultimately it's just a distraction. And that's like a conviction that I had. As I continue to read the word, continue to pursue the godliness that the Bible describes of growing in my relationship with Christ, as well as growing in other aspects like physically, mentally, spiritually. I kind of like repeated myself there. But as I seek this growth and continue to read the word, I started to question myself like, what am I supposed to be doing with my life? Because you have the apostles of the Bible who their life's mission was literally preaching the gospel. Granted, way back when they were on the earth and doing their ministry, they didn't have the internet. They didn't have all these forms of entertainment. They didn't have phones. Like all of these distractions weren't present back then. So in some ways, it was easier, but it was also harder because like it's harder to get the message across without these forms of media. So like it really just depends on what perspective you look at it from. But I just felt myself asking myself this question, like, what am I supposed to be doing, bro? Because on the one hand, I thought that I wanted to be this big worldly name and do all of these great things from a worldly perspective. And then I get to a passage like First Corinthians. It's when I listen to what I'm called to as a believer, what I'm supposed to be doing with my life as a believer. I'm just like, man, well, that totally goes against every agenda that I had before. So now, what am I supposed to do? So let me just read the verses. NKJV, 1 Corinthians chapter 1, 17 to 21. And it reads, "For Christ did not send me to baptize, but to preach the gospel, not with wisdom of words, lest the cross of Christ should be made of no effect. For the message of the cross is foolishness to those who are perishing, but to us who are being saved, it is the power of God. For it is written, I will destroy the wisdom of the wise and bring to nothing the understanding of the prudent. Where is the wise? Where is the scribe? Where is the disputer of this age? Has not God made foolish the wisdom of this world? For since, in the wisdom of God, the world through wisdom did not know God, it pleased God through the foolishness of the message preached to save those who believe." So, as someone who is a communications major, who thought that I wanted to be this like big worldly name and learn all these different ways to communicate to reach the masses, I read a passage like that and it's like, for my primary focus, or what should be my primary focus, all of that isn't really necessary. So now I'm just like, dang, I wanted to learn all these different ways to communicate. And then I read in the Bible that the preaching of the gospel, like, it doesn't require wise words or eloquent speech like I thought I needed. So now I'm like, man, what do I do now? And I really started to like really question if even this, like this podcast, if this is anything that I should be doing, because it's like, it seems so pointless on the one hand. So I phoned a friend. I called my friend Felipe. Shout out to Felipe. But Felipe, he's more grounded in his faith than I am. He's been at it. I can't remember how long he's been at it. I just know it's been longer than I am because he's like a big brother spiritually to me. And he gave me this answer. And I won't even lie to y'all. When he gave me the answer, I'm like, man, I kind of wish you gave me something else. But looking back at it, it's kind of exactly what I needed to hear. He basically gave me this analogy. I can't remember exactly what he said, but he spoke about how we're Christ's bride. Like, the church is the bride of Christ, spiritually speaking. And so, as that bride, we're supposed to look at it as a daily devotion. Like, how can we please our Lord? How can we honor and glorify him through what we're doing on a day-to-day basis? And it brought me back to what someone else said. I can't remember who said it, but they're like, in everything you do, you should question if it's bringing you closer or taking you farther away from God. Now, I'm not preaching legalism. All right. I still enjoy my entertainment. I still enjoy living life. God has made so many beautiful things in this world for us to enjoy on this side of eternity. So I'm not preaching legalism. I'm not telling you not to go out and enjoy life. And at the same time, it's like Paul says in so many of his writings, like, there are things that are beneficial and things that aren't beneficial. And so we should be focused on doing the things that are beneficial to us, our spirit, things that won't hinder us in the long run. And bringing it back to my aspirations, there's nothing wrong with being someone who is a big name, has a big name in the world. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with wanting to do great things in the world. It's just a matter of like my heart disposition toward it. Like, why do I really want to do this? Is it because I want to bring glory to the Father? Or is it because I want to bring glory and honor to myself? Am I doing this so I can reach souls for Christ? Or am I doing this so I can get a paycheck? These are things that I constantly have to examine myself for. And that's why I just feel like following God is hard nowadays. Like there from everything that I spoke about, from the many distractions, from having to make sure that I'm keeping my heart in check, especially with the distractions that we have today. Like they're so ready and available to us. It's hard. It is hard. And still, I'm glad that these are the kinds of problems that I'm having because it could be worse, in all honesty. And now that I'm like on this note, it kind of reminds me of how Jesus himself, he was talking about how it's hard for someone who's rich to enter the kingdom of heaven. Not to say that there aren't believers who have earned massive amounts of wealth for themselves, because I'm sure there are. 8 billion people in the world, I'm sure there's at least one rich person who genuinely has a relationship with Christ. However, I do understand what he meant because there are so many stories of people who have money. And it's funny because the Bible even talks about people like this who they're up at night because of how many problems having that much money brings them. They have to make sure that whatever business they run or whatever operation that earns them that wealth is running smoothly. So much so that like they can't even get a good night's sleep because of how worried they are. And that's where it comes back to choosing your heart. Like, yes, serving God is hard. Following Christ is hard, bro. It's not for the faint of heart. That's why he says count the cost before you start building a tower and then you realize that you don't have enough to finish it and people laugh at you. So, yes, following God is hard. And living life without him? Yo, living life without God is tough. Especially since I remember what it was like before I had God in my life. I remember what it was like feeling like everything I do is meaningless. Not to say that I couldn't still feel like that now. It's just knowing who I am in Christ has given me a sense of perspective that always keeps me grounded. Like, first and foremost, I'm his son. And by that token, as a son of the Father, as a follower of Christ, I have a mission to get his message out there. Before coming to God, life just felt like, man, I'm just passing the days by, waiting to die. That's literally what my life felt like. It just felt like I was living each day, living it as a day where I'm just getting closer to the day I'm no longer here. But now I have the struggle of, as Paul described it, putting what's in the past behind me and racing toward what lies ahead, which is the hope that I have in Christ. I know I'm just yapping at this point, but yeah, like that's really what I wanted to get to. Like, yes, following God is hard. But at the end of the day, we all have to choose our battles. We all have to choose the things that we want to fight for, the things that we want to believe in. And at the very least, I have nothing to lose. To the people who are skeptic, because I see online like there are a lot of people who don't share the same belief, and they're like, "Why are you so like convinced that it's true?" I look at it like this, right? I'm convinced that it's true because, as the Bible describes it, it's a gift from God. You can't come to faith without him drawing you first. You can't come to faith through human reasoning and human logic. And so I put it like this. If I'm wrong and none of this is real, and when I die, I never wake up again, at the very least, I'm living a life trying to promote love, compassion, peace. And when I die, I just don't wake up. Whereas if I'm right. That's tough for anybody who doesn't have the same beliefs. Like, I'm not even trying to like dunk on anyone because we're all going to believe what we're going to believe. And I have no judgment to people who don't share the same beliefs. And if you don't share the same beliefs and you've made it this far into the podcast, like, yo, salute to you. I really appreciate you. Especially since this topic is so personal to me. But I encourage all of you, please make a choice. Take it from somebody who didn't give their life to Christ until they were 19? 19. Till I was 19. Life, albeit a bit harder, is much more worth living when it's the Lord himself empowering you to live it. When you have his spirit aiding you in all that you do. It's not easier. I would never say living the Christian life is easier. It's not. It's tough. But it is a lot more worthwhile. And that's my encouragement to everybody this week. Make your choice. Choose your heart. To all my listeners on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, please, if you like the podcast, give it a 5-star rating. To those of y'all watching here on YouTube, please leave me a thumbs up, drop a sub if you're new. And check out one of the episodes that pop up here on the end screen, or that playlist with all the episodes. It's been your boy Jay, spreading his 2 cents, one pod at a time. Until next time, I'm out, cuh.